If we're going to acknowledge that we're suffering as men, and we're killing ourselves at a higher rate than ever. 70% of suicide is male. Divorce rates are through the roof. But men are no longer going to college at the same rates. They're in essence exiting out of the world around us. We're suffering. And if we're suffering, that means our women are suffering. That means our children are suffering. And that means our world is suffering. So in order to remove suffering, we need to start on the individual level.
Well, welcome everybody to day 2 of the No More Heroes Summit, where we are diving into the warrior. And to kick off today, we have none other but Nick Palladino-King. Nick, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Absolutely. Thanks, Oak. My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear what you've got for us today, how to thrive as a man for the spiritual warrior. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to you.
Brad, I'm excited. And I thought a lot about the title for, informing what I was going to speak about today. So really everything I'm going to share is just from the title alone. And that's kind of what organically came out. But before we get into anything else, what I want to do, and I don't know if anyone's else has done this, though, because I actually want to lead us through a meditation. And the meditation is going to relate a lot to what we're going to talk about today around self-confidence and inner work. And it's a fantastic tantric meditation to develop confidence, a sense of self, and also to help us when we find these deeper aspects of ourself that may be scary. So it'll be a nice aid for that. So for those of you here watching and everyone else that's going to watch recorded, what I want you to do first is create a T chart on a piece of paper. Quinn, I think you've done this before. And on the T chart, you're going to have B on the left and A on the right. That means before and after. Okay. And as you do that, then on the left side, you're going to write a P, M, E, and V. Okay. So you got your before on the left, your after on the right. And on the left side, you have P for physical, M for mental, E for emotional, and V for vibrational. So what I'll offer you to do now is on the B side, the before side, for physical, how are you feeling? You can write a word, you can write an emotion, you can draw a picture. Mentally, what are your thoughts like right now? Emotionally, how are you feeling? Tired, sad, anxious? And then the last one, vibrationally, that could be like a 1 out of 10. Are you buzzing like you had a bunch of coffee? Do you feel turned off, out of tune? So physical, mental, emotional, and vibrational. You can use words, pictures, or numbers to explain to yourself what those mean. Take about a minute or so, feel into those, see into those, and just trust yourself, right? What comes up. All right. Okay. So from here, if you're just finishing up, take another moment or two. If you're ready, go ahead and close your eyes. And you can bring your shoulders up to your ears. Take a big, deep inhale in through your nose. Open mouth, exhale to relax, to release, and ultimately to arrive into your body and into this present moment, right here, right now. As you arrive, take a moment to feel your physical body, bringing awareness to it. Noticing if there's any tension in your forehead, your shoulders, your jaw. You can then begin to scan your thoughts in your mind. How are you thinking? How are you talking to yourself? Notice any narratives, any stories, any myths that may be floating around in there. Any expectations, assumptions. You can then next check into how you're feeling. What's your emotional state in this moment? Excited, nervous, turned off, turned on. Simply bringing awareness to how you're feeling. And finally, scanning your vibration, maybe your connection to yourself, to the world around you. Again, simply noticing, just bringing awareness, not judging, not labeling. And as you sit in the seat of a little more awareness, start to find the breath that feels right to you in this moment, right here, right now. And notice how much inhale do you need to fill yourself up, to bring in, to receive. How much exhale do you need to release, to let go, to empty? And then what's that perfect pace of inhale and exhale for you in this moment, right here, right now? So not too fast, not too slow, just right. And you'll know you've found the breath that's right for you when you feel a sense of release or relief, a sense that everything in this moment is happening just as it should be, just as it's supposed to be. And take a moment to breathe into that, breathe into yourself, breathe into presence. Now, from this deeper place and space of presence, of awareness, you can bring your mind's eye down into your navel center. And you can see, sense, or feel a red triangle connecting from hip point to hip point, and then the tip of that triangle going right up to your sternum. Okay, so again, in your mind's eye, see, sense, or feel a red triangle connecting from hip point to hip point, and then the tip of the point going right up into your sternum. And now inside that red triangle in your navel center, right in your belly button, place a flame that's flickering inside that red triangle, inside your belly. So again, red triangle, hip point to hip point, coming up into sternum. And now inside that triangle, there's a flame flickering. Maybe you feel some warmth, some presence, some confidence, an inner flame. And as you keep your mind now focused on this triangle and this flame, you can begin to kiss the flame of your belly with your breath. So as you inhale, maybe that flame expands and grows. As you exhale, maybe it contracts. Now keep your mind there, red triangle, as you kiss the flame of your belly with your breath. And continue doing that perfectly, just as you are, for the next few moments. Finish the breath you're on. When you're finished, you can bring your chin to your chest to seal your practice. And then rub your palms together. You can bring some heat, some warmth over your eyes. And do that again. Bring some heat, some warmth, some love over your heart. Good. One more time here over your belly. And one more time. And since this is a men's retreat, go ahead, rub your palms and bring some warmth over your genitals. Ladies, you can do the same. All right, and then slowly open your eyes and come back into the space around you. All right, and then take a moment on your paper on the after side. Now write down how you feel physically, mentally, emotionally, and vibrationally. And as you do that, notice the shifts that were made, that you felt in just a few minutes, just 5 minutes of practice. And notice, what is 5 minutes of being intentional with yourself, being present? What's the potential impact of that on yourself? And a lot of what is required of us in the world to show up fully is what I believe is to prime ourselves for the day, to really think about, how do I want to be in the world? How do I want to show up? What are my intentions? What's my mission? And as we connect to these things, it gives us a better chance of truly showing up in an embodied way. Right? I'm not saying perfectly. I'm not saying that we're always going to do this, but it gives us a chance, it gives us a shot to prime ourselves, almost like priming the pump of a well. Oak, any differences that you noticed from before and after? Anything that really stood out?
Yeah, definitely a greater sense of expansion. I notice as I approach
Okay.
the beginning moments of these more energetically demanding moments, be they hosting on the podcast or hosting the summit, I contract a bit into this
Mm-hmm.
single pointed focus. And so being able to return and find that single point with expansion and
Mm-hmm.
relaxation is what came through for me.
Excellent. Excellent. That's a really good setup too, for that can be a little more the masculine energy, a really one-pointed focused and really intense. And that's not a bad thing, but also then what Oak is describing now is a little more feminine energy coming in, a little more expansion, connectiveness, connectivity, and we can learn to have both of those together. And I'll actually offer that as something that's required of us to be complete men, and complete beings. So let's dive in. I'm not going to spend any time introducing myself. We already did that yesterday on the intro. If you're really interested to know more about me, go watch that. But I thought about, okay, what's a spiritual warrior? I think that term can be a little loaded. So I think we should first just define that for what it is. And a spiritual warrior is someone who is on a personal journey of self-improvement or self-growth. Okay? What's interesting here is, as I was doing research, it's someone that faces internal and external struggles, but there's a sense of courage and resilience that come along with it. They're in service of others with compassion at the core of their being. And they live in a higher purpose, right? One that's greater than themselves. And I would say that's non-negotiable. Ultimately, they're here to combat their own self-ignorance, right? To awaken themselves to the things they are unaware of. And in order to remove suffering, we have to start to be willing to turn inward. There's a sense of toughness, of spiritual chops that says, I'm willing to turn inward. I'm willing to see what I haven't been able to see. And I'm willing to do that with a sense of courage and resilience and love and compassion and really for yourselves is what I'm saying. And this will then develop in yourself. And then you can bring this out into the world. And as I thought about this, Oak and everyone listening, I said, wow, the qualities of the spiritual warrior are really the qualities of a man that wants to move from surviving or striving and ultimately to thriving. Right? We can call that a conscious man. I've had a men's group called the mindful man. But I thought, what do men need to thrive? And I would say courage, resilience to be themselves, to be open, to be honest, to be vulnerable. I'm sure that's a theme that's coming up throughout this week. They need to be in service to the world around them, to feel like they have a purpose, to feel like they're needed. I think that's uniquely to men. I think we start to cause trouble if we don't have that sense that we're helping, that we're here for a purpose. They need to embody compassion, presence, and love, and they need to have a mission, right? And that mission needs to inform why they're here and what they're doing in the world. So I'm just noticing that the spiritual warrior and the man, this enlightened man or divine man, they're the same thing. And for the women listening too, there's no difference here as well. There's going to be similarities as well. So in order to thrive and develop these qualities of a spiritual warrior, you could even say a superior man. And if you haven't read that book by David Dita and Oak, I'm sure you have, I highly suggest that you read the way of the superior man. But first, we need to turn inward and develop awareness if we want to start to remove the suffering. And there's a beautiful framework, and this is from Buddhism and Hinduism as well, and it's called the kleshas. And the kleshas refer to the 5 causes of our suffering. So as we're going to start to wake up and start to be more enlightened, well, first we kind of got to get in the mud for a little bit. So I'll give some frameworks on how to do that in a way that works, or at least has worked for me. That's all I can speak to. So what I thought about is, if we're going to acknowledge that we're suffering as men, and we're killing ourselves at a higher rate than ever. 70% of suicide is male. Divorce rates are through the roof. But men are no longer going to college at the same rates. They're in essence exiting out of the world around us. We're suffering. And if we're suffering, that means our women are suffering. That means our children are suffering. And that means our world is suffering. So in order to remove suffering, we need to start on the individual level. And as we remove suffering on the individual level, we begin to remove it on the collective level. And what I'm talking about now would be the individuality within totality. You could think of that as all ships rising together or all ships falling together. And as you wake yourself up, the consciousness elevates. As you become less conscious, it also declines. And that can sound like a lot of pressure, but don't put the pressure on yourself. That's not going to help. Lighten up, and you may find that it makes it a little easier. So the kleshas, there's 5. And I can share my screen, right? Yeah. Cool. Can you see my screen there? Good, cool. All right. So the kleshas, 5 kleshas, it starts with the first one in the upper left, which is called avidya, or also known as ignorance. Okay. And this can come across as quite a harsh word, but the ignorance refers to our inability to see reality for what it is. I think the best way to kind of describe avidya or ignorance is like on an old car. If you've seen a headlight before that's like yellow and shrouded and it's really foggy, well, the light behind it is shining just as bright as it always does. But because of this film, or we could call it a veil, that's over the lens, no matter how bright that light is, it can't truly shine. So part of our work as we're removing suffering is to start to notice, what are we ignorant to? What are we not seeing as reality? And things that shroud that lens are our own fears, our own doubts, our stories. We've talked a lot about myths. There's narratives out there, and especially for how men should be or how they shouldn't be or what they should do. All of these shoulds, all of these things that aren't present moment, create the veils and through which we see the world. An example would be like, let's say there's a car accident and 10 people saw it. We would get 10 different accounts of the incident. Well, only one thing happened. So how is that possible that we have 10 different realities? Well, each person has their own reality. Was it a man driving? Was it a woman driving? Was race involved? All these things will change how each individual sees reality and are ultimately ignorance, right, to the one true reality that's happening. So we start to remove the film so that we can start to see more clearly. Now, as we go around the wheel, and there's no direction here, but I like to go right to left. Then we can start to look at, well, what's the next thing that creates our suffering? That would be what's called ashmita, or ego. And the ego is anything that I attach to, anything that I say, this is uniquely Nick. Well, the problem with that is when those things don't happen, then that creates issues in my life and my personality and the people around me, right? Things get out of control. Now, ego itself isn't bad. It's actually quite necessary. It just gets a really bad rap. What we want to learn to do with ego is to lessen its grasp on us, right? If I didn't have an ego, I wouldn't be here sharing. I have to believe that I have something worth value to show up and share, at least at first. There takes some arrogance to speak in front of others, at least at first, until you have a deeper sense of consciousness and awareness. But ego, again, it's not a bad thing. You just want to lessen its grasp on you so that it's not driving the bus of you. And for most of us, it is. That's what we're being pumped, ego. What does it mean to be a man? This is how a man should be. That's ego, right? Well, this is how this man is. This is how this man feels in this moment. That's a lessening of ego. And as we go down, then there's 2 aspects here that really start to harden, or let's say even like solidify our ego. And that's going to be attachments and aversions. And these are the opposite side of the same coin. So the attachment is all day long, what I'm trying to do is bring in more and more of the people, places, and things that I like. Okay. And when I get those things, I feel happy. I feel satisfied. I feel joy. And when I don't get those things, I feel sad. I feel less than. I feel devalued. I feel like I'm a victim. So all day long, I'm controlling my reality by trying to bring in more and more of my attachments. And as like I said, whatever I attach to becomes my ego. So for example, I have an iPhone. Okay. If I were to simply say, oh, I like iPhones, this is my preference over Samsung. That's not a judgment. That doesn't become part of my ego. I'm not making it greater than or less than. The moment I say that Nick has this iPhone and I associate my worth or my value with iPhone, this is when it starts to become part of my ego. So if you take my iPhone from me, you've now taken part of me. You've taken part of who I believe or who I think I am. Now, this is just a microcosm of what we're doing in the world, right? We're a bunch of kids with toys and alcohol running around, and we're seeing this in the political climate, right? The inverse would be the aversion. And all day long, I'm trying to push away people, places, and things that I don't want. And when I'm able to do that, I'm happy. When those things leak through and they come to me, then I'm sad. I'm unhappy. I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm mad, right? Classic kind of unconscious male behavior. So all day long, I'm trying to push away things I don't want, and I'm trying to pull things in that I do want. Well, to me, that sounds like control. That sounds like neuroses, OCD. So you're just now on a roller coaster of ego and attachment and aversion, further enhancing your ignorance, further enhancing your inability to see the world for what it is. So you want to start to release your attachments, release your aversions, lessen your ego, right? Become more aware. And then finally, the desire to live, and this would translate as the fear of death, right? And ultimately, the ego is afraid of one thing. It's afraid that it doesn't exist. It's afraid that it's going to die. The ego can't handle that that is true, that the ego is not immortal. It's actually just here for a short amount of time. Now, we are divine, so we have more of a eternal aspect in us, but the ego doesn't. So it's ultimately afraid it's going to die. As you develop a sense of internal confidence, and the meditation that I gave is called Nishta Dharana, that meditation is really helpful and designed to create a sense of self, a sense of internal power, a sense of I amness, not I amness because I have iPhone or I'm here speaking in front of people, and I amness simply because I am, right? Oh, I'm sure you've heard Hum Sa So Hum. I am that I am, right? There's nothing else more than that once you realize that teaching. But the desire to live is what's really driving the bus of most of us, right? Making most of our decisions, further increasing our ignorance. So as you develop more of an internal state of confidence in your own personality, that you're here, you matter, regardless of what's happening, you begin to be more free. You begin to reduce your suffering. So in terms of the kleshas, these are the lenses we start to look through to remove suffering, okay? Now, as we work with the kleshas, what can begin to happen, and this is why awareness and mindfulness can be a little scary, is we start to realize, well, there's a lot of mud in there. There's a lot of muck that I've been unaware of. And as we start to go through the mud, well, we need to start to develop a relationship with our own shadows, our own fears, our own traumas, our own ignorances. And that can be challenging, right? That can be unsettling. That can be one of the most intense experiences you'll have in your life as you really start to wake up to yourself. If anyone's done a lot of psychedelics, you know what I'm talking about from an experiential experience. But this is why we want to have compassion, and we want to have reverence, and we want to have love as we go in to ourselves and have that sense of courage and resilience. These are all necessary attributes of the spiritual warrior, of someone who wants to learn how to thrive. But as you go through and you start to go through the mud, what you can find is that's where the gold lives, right? This is where the gold of your true self is. And as you start to then go through the gold, and you can realize, oh, there's a lot to shine in there. So the next thing I want to show is, well, what's in there that's not shining? Well, for men specifically, we can look at a lot of the golden divine. Sorry, we can look at what's called the golden masculine, or the divine masculine. Okay. So as we go through here, notice these aren't male or female qualities. That's really important to understand about the feminine and masculine energies. But as we go through the mud, we can start to find that our greatest treasures live there. And if we look over at the natural masculine, or we could call it the golden masculine, these are treasures like confidence, inner strength, right? Responsibility, focus, protection, clarity. I would say presence, being here, right? No matter what, no matter how challenging it gets, that's a really balanced masculine. But then look down at the wounded masculine: perpetrator, abuse of power, dominance, aggression. These are what we're hearing as toxic masculinity in today's world. What we're not hearing much about is this golden masculine, right? We're demonizing the masculine as a whole, and it's not. There's the imbalanced masculine. And again, notice these aren't male qualities, these are human qualities: abuse of power, aggression, control, unstable, avoidant, abuse, right? Well, as you start to develop these more natural golden masculine qualities, in order to become a complete man who's thriving, I would argue that we also need to then bring in these natural or golden feminine qualities as well, just as Oak and I referred to in the meditation. Well, what are those? Unconditional love, understanding, a nurturing, a tenderness, stillness, a flow, emotional presence. And it's as I'm talking about this, I can even feel the energy in me shift as I was talking about the masculine energies compared to the feminine energies. And again, wow, can I have both of these? Can I be really present and confident with a sense of inner strength, or like a really strong spine? And can I have an open heart that's still, that's unconditional, that's understanding, that's nurturing? Quinn works with me. I would hope that Quinn sees both of these in me, as a leader and as a man. It can be scary to embrace all of these. This is a lot to ask, right? This isn't a simple ask to bring in all of these, but as we go through the kleshas, and now we start to go through, okay, what's behind the kleshas? These are the energies in there. This is where you want to go in and start to say, what's hiding in the muck? What's hiding in the mud? It's like a gold miner sifting through the dirt to find the treasure. And this is really what we're doing with ourselves. And this is the basis of alchemy, right? We're transmuting a base metal into gold. There's no difference as what we're doing with ourselves and with this summit this week, and with inner work. Any questions on that as I'm kind of going through these different aspects of the kleshas, or going through these aspects of the male and or masculine and feminine energies?
I'd love to offer reflection and
Yeah.
encouragement to anyone to throw their questions in the chat as well. The kleshas stand out to me almost, this might be very rudimentary language, but almost like the enemy of the spiritual warrior. It's like, if we are to understand that our capacity to overcome any external struggle or challenge is based in our ability to overcome the innermost impediments, then we can look at attachment, aversion, the inflated egoism, a clinging to life, and the lack of wisdom, or avidya, because vidya is wisdom and avidya is the lack of it, so the absence, right? Mm-hmm. The ignorance, as our starting point. And so I thought that might be an interesting way to articulate it. It's like we have this five-headed dragon, so to say, inside of us, that if we don't pay it attention, will necessarily manifest itself into that confrontational abuse of power, dominance, aggression. And even in some senses, it will manifest both as the wounded masculine and the wounded feminine, because it is interwoven so deeply into the psyche that it touches on both poles of expression. And that's why it seems to me to be so vital to identify these enemies within first.
Yeah, it's so well said. And as you're speaking, Oak, I'm thinking of, well, the warrior, and you can take a look at an athlete like a boxer. Well, one of the reasons that a boxer becomes so great is when they have a great opponent, right? And the great athlete or boxer cannot become great without an opponent that is just as great. And they're constantly just leveling each other up. So in that sense, well, then these kind of shadow aspects of ourselves are actually our greatest friend in our journey to waking up and having impact in the world, because without them, we won't have the spiritual chops, like I referred to go out in the world and make change. And when things get tough, and they will, and the more you open up and the more you share, the more you put yourself at, in the space where people can judge you and attack you, you need to develop more and more of a sense of inner strength and capacity. And it's extremely important as you go out into the world and share that you're willing to be judged. And you can only do that truly when you've learned to go into yourself. And as I referred to on yesterday, Oak, is when you shake hands with these shadows, you shake hands with your demons, you shake hands with the material that your mother and your father gave you, and you get to know them, and you go, wow, these energies are in there because they love me. These energies are in there because they're there for me where no one else will be. And when you go find these aspects of yourself, you don't make them wrong. You give them a hug and you thank them for being willing to be there so you can grow, so that when you've work this material and you go out into the world, you're ready for whatever gets thrown at you. Because as long as you love yourself, as long as you're whole and complete in who you are, the external world has much less of a push and pull on you. I'm not saying it won't have a push and pull, but has much less. And you become what I would say is an empowered being, right? One that's a conscious participant in its own reality. I really love that, Oak. That's an excellent piece to put in. So, as I said, I think we should maybe look at this idea of what's the complete man. And to me, it's going to be the combination of this natural masculine and feminine and natural feminine that are all together, right? They're present, they're confident, they're loving, they're vulnerable, and they're a leader who lives with a mission and a purpose. Okay. So I'll ask you, this is one to chew on. Why are you here on this planet? What do you want? And ultimately, what are you going to do about it to bring it into the world? And chew on that. Why are you here? What do you want? And what are you going to do about it? This right here this is a call to become a more mindful man, one who is on a mission to elevate himself and the collective consciousness. Why? Because a man on a mission is a dangerous force for good. I just got the chills saying that. A man on a mission is a dangerous force for good. He's dangerous because he can't be controlled by his fears, his doubts, his aversions, his attachments, his ignorance, right? And ultimately, he plays a game that is led by a higher purpose, right? One that he is unwilling to waver, one that he is unwilling to give up on, one that he is unwilling to not see manifested into the world. So I challenge everyone listening to step into this call of action. Okay? I like the idea, as I'm kind of closing out here, of becoming what I would call like the warrior in the garden. I don't know, Oak, if you've heard this before, but this to me is someone who's centered, who's loving, who's present, and who is ready to take right action in any moment. Right? We could look at Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita would be this warrior in the garden. And to become the warrior in the garden would be to become free of the narratives, the myths, the stories that you've been told of what it is to be a man or how a man should be, and instead step into your own unique purpose and power as a man. And what you'll find at the end of the day, and especially for men, is we are seeking freedom, right? We're seeking freedom from our own inner turmoil. We're seeking freedom from the world. And when we have freedom, that is when we will ultimately come home to ourselves, to our partners. And that is when we will ultimately improve the world around us in a very positive way, simply by being, not through doing, but by being who we are and walking around with a brighter light. And as you do that, you'll stop surviving and striving, and ultimately you'll begin to thrive. Questions on that? Any comments? Any clarifications?
Beautifully laid out. Thank you, Nick. That's extraordinary. I love that you were able to weave together this polar wisdom with the yogic understanding of what keeps us from our development. I really appreciate the thought that you've put into this. I want to read a comment here. Jeanette said, to embrace these energies that are there to help me. I like this. I believe fear is the opposite of love. That's excellent. Thank you, Jeanette.
I like that a lot. Fear is the opposite of love. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, and with love, there's a synonym there, which would be non-attachment. And it's kind of funny to think about. It's like when you find these aspects of yourself, you don't want to be attached to them either, and vice versa. There's almost like a conversation that needs to begin to happen. And maybe you find something that's been in there for 30, 40, 50 years, and you go, holy crap, I didn't know that was in there. And when you find it, there needs to be a conversation of, hey, you've been here for me for a long time, and I'm not afraid of you, and I love you. And it's time for you to start moving out. And you don't need to just rip it out right away, but kind of give it 30 days notice. Hey, you're being evicted. You're going to go find another place to live. But you do that from love and a sense of non-attachment rather than fear. Because what we fear, we develop and bring more of into our lives, right? What we resist persists. So yeah, when you find these aspects of yourself, love them, because that's what they're doing for you.
Jeanette, I see you unmuted yourself. Did you want to share something?
I didn't really know how this worked because I pressed on the date and I got here before the hour, and so I said 2 a.m. So I came out of it, wrote you a note, and then I tried it one more time and I got in, and I thought, to me, this is all things in divine order, and this helps me with my masculine side. And it also helps me to understand my son. I did not understand about the need to go out and have a mission and that was key
Mhm.
for a masculine. I did not know that. And I mean, there are things that just don't get spoken. Like
It's
people
at
don't.
the core, Jeanette, it's at the core of being a man. And I don't know if any of us can tell you why or put words to it, but it's when we have a purpose, that's when we feel needed. A simple example would be like if my wife can change the light bulb, right? If she asks me to do it, there's something inside me. It's a very basic example that feels I'm needed, I'm valued. And if men don't have a mission, they can lack a sense of value in the world. They need something to go after. And what's really important here too is, and as you understand this from the divine feminine side, the masculine feels most loved when it's free. Okay. Well, and the feminine feels most loved when it's supported. Okay. So what the feminine can do is, as the masculine has a mission, is support it. Go do that. And then as it does that, as the masculine feels free, that's when it will come back to the feminine, who will then receive its love. So they sound like counterbalances, but they're one and the same. So yeah, you go support your son on his mission, help him find it, encourage him to go after it. And part of that as a mother is letting him go out into the world and find his own way and find his own struggles. And you may want to look at the book Iron John, which is something we've talked about in these men's groups. It's really beneficial for men and women to understand how these different realities live in us.
Was there a book about how the attachments work and letting go of the attachment patterns and all of that?
I would check out the book Attached. Can be really helpful for that. Yeah, that can be really helpful.
Beautiful.
That's it.
Thank you, Jeanette, for that inquiry. I love that. If you come back around on Friday, Jeanette, we're doing the king archetype, and the two pieces these two energies that dictate the essence of the king are telos and nuos is how I've been pronouncing it. They're Greek words. I'm not sure if I'm saying them correctly, but telos is the ultimate aim. And without the ultimate aim, we cannot actually access kingship as men. And so we can see that in the warrior. As in my next talk, which starts in about 20 minutes here, I'll be talking about the two essences of the warrior. One is soma, which is the body. The other is ethos, which is this good, the ultimate good. And that for the warrior to succeed in any of his endeavors to find victory, he has to have a sense of what is good and to take that embodied and enacted vision into the world. So there's a lot of overlapping with these archetypal
Talk
pieces.
about that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, didn't need to interrupt you, but
No worries. I think my video froze here, but that's a very, very crucial piece, is to be able to have that kind of orientation. And, there's sort of a joke sometimes when we think about men needing to be needed. I think about it from a biological point of view when we think about how even the spermatozoa acts in the reproductive process, right? It's the egg that's receptive, but it's the sperm that goes, I have one mission and it is over there. And it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And that's it. Like that is the essence of this yang in the most yang and masculine cell there is, which is that spermatozoa. So although it's a bit rudimentary, maybe a bit crude and kind of funny, it really does put into perspective that there's this essence of I need a target and I need to know that I can achieve that, and let's go.
yeah.
Yeah, the sperm and egg energy is actually quite rooted in yogic philosophy, by the way. And like Oak said, the egg yields and it receives and it waits, but all the unmanifested power lives within the egg, right? And the sperm, its job is to go out and find and go search for it. Again, two dualities becoming one, right? So they're necessary for each other. That's really well said. Oak.
Awesome.
I'm
thank you for
just
that.
I'm so pleased. I just want to say thank you to both of you really for this presentation and Oak for making this happen. And Nick, it was really I was struggling to keep up with my little notes here. I will look you up.
You got it. You got it on all the different levels. And yeah, if anyone listening wants to check me out, my website, nickpalladino.co. Best thing to do, go there. I have an ebook there on tips and tools on how to transform your life. Get the ebook. You'll be on my newsletter, and that's the way you can contact me and get in touch if anyone has questions.